In this episode, I want to dive into the fascinating topic of human evolution. Because of the magic, I've always found life science intriguing, and creating videos like this forces me to deepen my understanding of these subjects. In fact, looking back, we usually think about their own really little after all. We human beings to explore the world, to obtain knowledge, seeking power, so as to satisfy our human needs and desires, driving us to continue to open up to new horizons. But we rarely think about where these needs and desires come from. Why, for example, are we so obsessed with sugar and fats that we know they are unhealthy, and yet we still feast on them? Why do other animals have specific periods of occurrence where humans are not sexually active all the time? Why do we need the so-called approval of others and need a heart of gossiping about them at all times? Why do most creatures die when they lose their ability to procreate, while humans are so attached to life? And why do you yearn for poetry and farewell places? Do you love the feeling of traveling and running around and regretting being dead at home for another day? All kinds of human-specific desires and countless. In fact, this is all human as a living creature, millions of years to adapt to the environment, the emergency of evolution of the result. Every inch of our body structure, every joint, every pinch of hair, everything. Thinking we are hungry, happy, frightened, frustrated, sympathetic, compassionate. All of these feelings are the expression of millions of years of game with nature. Every phenomenon contains a complex evolutionary logic. Of course, such a huge amount of knowledge can certainly not be covered in one program. I use this part of knowledge as a series to show some key points, the process of human evolution. At the same time, keep interspersing and supplementing it in future videos on other topics. Taking us humans as a sample, we will build up a basic knowledge of the principles of evolution, and understand that human beings are creatures that evolved, not products of design. Given that we are going to be talking only about the evolution of humans, let's start roughly with the emergence of the genus Homo. Various fossilized evidence suggests that the earliest humans appeared in Africa. And on the Great Plains of Africa, the most obvious feature that distinguishes humans from the vast majority of animals is that they walked upright. Walking upright is of extraordinary significance to humans, as it is the golden key in the evolution process, opening up a direction of evolution completely different from that of most living creatures, and laying down the basic form of modern human beings. That's what I'm focusing on this video to talk about upright, the cause and effect of walking. In 1973, scientists at an archaeological site in Ethiopia discovered the fossil of what will later be named Lucy, a 12-year-old ape from 3.2 million years ago. The complete and pronounced arches of his feet indicated that he had been able to walk upright for a long time. That's because foot arches are there to add elasticity to upright walking and to shock absorb the body, which could otherwise cause concussions in a 100-meter sprint. But the emergence of arches also made the feet no longer suitable for grasping, and thus no longer suitable for life in the trees. Before this, the foot should have had the same flexibility as the hand. Evolution gave up this flexibility for upright walking, so the appearance of the foot arch is the most obvious sign of upright walking. It also evolved a wide pelvis for supporting the upper body and connecting the trunk to the lower limbs. Also, a significantly larger kneecap than in other organisms was a product of a shock absorption while upright walking. All of these traits indicate that Lucy could do long periods of upward walking and even running, because similar fossils were also found one after another in Africa in the following decade or so. Together with the genetic specificity, scientists have roughly concluded that the ancestors of human walking upright occurred around at least 4.4 million years ago in East Africa. Because the long evolution did not happen instantly, it was at least more than 100,000 years in a specific environment, the result of positive leverage. So, what happened at that time? What forced our ancestors to leave the canopy to come to the ground and start walking upright? The theory we've heard before is that because of the need to take and use tools, our human ancestors, because they had to use tools, took the initiative to stand up, freeing their hands, wielding various tools, and embracing the beginnings of civilization. This theory is certainly preferred by us who revere civilization and claim to be noble. Earlier definitions of human beings also prioritized the use and the manufacture of tools. But the reality is that humans walked and even ran upright at least 1 million years ago before the appearance of the most primitive tools. And this theory can also be reversed. That is, human beings began to use tools because they first walked upright and then freed their hands. So this subjective theory is not valid. Then to the study the reason why human group walked upright first. Of course, we need to understand the natural environment at that time. Since most of the fossils show the human origin is in East Africa, these fossils are especially concentrated in the territory of Ethiopia, Kenya, Tanzania. Then we need to look at the natural environment of this region. Through the map, we can see a very obvious feature of the landscape, which is the famous East African Rift Valley. The East African Rift Valley is due to the drift of the African plate and the Indian Ocean plate in about 10 million years ago. The African continent began to split apart from there. The original African continent is a whole, dense forests, water and grass, a variety of animals, including primates, monkeys. Apes are in the forest to collect sufficient fruit and leaves, and occasionally eat some tree insects or small animals. Because most large carnivores could not climb trees, life in the trees was much safer for the ancient apes. Perhaps because of the life between the canopy need to reach out to reach the fruit on the tip of the tree, some apes also evolved the ability to stand in the canopy or walk in a short distance in the canopy. But there is no need to walk around for a long time, so their body has not changed significantly. Most of the action is still wandering around with hands and feet, grasping the branches. When the Great Rift was completed, however, the forest of Africa cut in half. Later, at the end of the Neogen period, global climate change, increased glacial activity, and the cooling of the climate gradually replaced tropical plains with deciduous forests and grasslands. At the same time, geological movements near the East African Rift Valley led to the simultaneous emergence of high mountains and gorges. The moist air brought by the trade winds from the west was blocked by the mountains, so the eastern side of the Rift Valley became more and more arid, and gradually the formerly dense forests turned into grasslands, which had been adapted to trees. Let the life of the ancient apes by the Rift Valley mountains and coulees blocked, and many other animals stayed in the east side of the Rift Valley. That is, the original life of the ancient apes in the trees do not have trees to climb, was forced to come to the earth, adapted to the earth's dangerous and barren life. This is when evolutionary pressure began to set in, as it was necessary to spot food in advance of animal attacks to have a greater probability of escaping, and they have to work hard to get up and get the straight lines over the grass. There was also a need to recognize direction while running, so they also had to try again hide while running. Due to the barrenness of the grassland food, they have to travel longer distances to find food. In this area, many animals that came down from trees failed to adapt to the environment of the grassland and were soon eliminated by natural selection. The harsh environment certainly killed most of the ancient apes. A directionless mutation of genes, cope with the screening of natural environment, still allowed a group of ancient apes that were able to adapt to the upright movement to live on. In fact, there is an even greater advantage about walking upright. These researchers are specializing in experiments so that people with the same weight and chimpanzees running the same long distance on the treadmill. At the same time, to give them a mask to measure the consumption of oxygen. The result of the test is very amazing. The specific distance of the human upright walking, the energy is required is only 1/4 of the energy consumed by the gorilla walking on all fours. That is, you're saying that by ingesting the same amount of energy, walking upright allows you to travel much further, and that there's a highly probability of finding your next meal on the Saharas. In harsher natural environments, even being able to conserve even a little bit of more energy, that's a hope of being able to continue to survive. This is one of the reasons why we humans can't resist food that are high in the calories. In the barren grasslands of Africa, if you can come across something with sugar or meat or nuts that contain a lot of fat, what are you waiting for? Hurry up and ingest it. That's how energy keep you alive longer. The evolutionary result of this is that when human taste system is exposed to sugar, the brain directly secretes dopamine, allowing the individual to remember that this is a good thing. The same thing happened with fats and oils. The digestive system evolved along it, allowing the planes that fell to the ground to digest more meat and fats, whereas before that they spend most of their time in trees marching on leaves, which made humans omnivorous, eating everything valuable, nutritious, and energy-rich as much as they could, or else dying for lack of something to eat. At the same time, the energy saved by walking upright allowed these human ancestors to have the leisure to reproduce more, or to practice the social skills by interacting as pack members. Complex things evolved from the simple causes. Originally, by the time humans evolved, probably the primary reason was because it saved energy and coped with the need to hunt, escape, and discern direction. Humans finally stood up permanently. As for why other animals didn't evolve to walk upright, it's because walking upright comes with just as many fatal drawbacks, which I'll talk about later in the program. So, the process of evolution is the process of finding the optimal solution in a particular environment. Here, I would like to make another point. The word evolution sounds like a wonderful word. In documentaries, we can often see the beauty of the process of evolution. Evolution symbolized by organisms like more advanced, more complex, more wonderful forms of change. However, through the process of our ancestors from crawling to upright just now, evolution is actually a very cruel process. First of all, the source of evolution is genetic mutation, the result which is 99.99% detrimental to living organisms. After all, genetic mutations are supposed to be the destruction of genetic information caused by abnormal natural environments or DNA replication errors. Nowadays, the most efficient way to destroy genetic information is nuclear radiation. These organisms will soon die due to the congenital defects. Only 1 in 10 million mutated individuals that are more adapted to the environment gain a competitive advantage, and then began to crowd out of the survival resources of other similar species, so that the similar species that do not have such an advantage have an increased probability of death, or lose the opportunity to reproduce with greater recurrence, so that the process of evolution is filled with this endless conflict, competition, and death. It is often argued that mankind has hardly evolved significantly since the age of the revolution, since the age of the civilization. So mankind is not a product of evolution, and then the creator is moved out of the way in passing. The point I'm trying to make is that if mankind has had a record of 5,000 years or so of this short time, there has been significant evolution. That would be the equivalent of all humans having to live in an environment full of carcinogenic radiation, providing 1 in 10,000 beneficial mutations for evolution. At the same time, these populations with beneficial mutations will have carried out a continuous massacre of the entire human society, wiping out all of the old individuals as much as possible. And then, these 1 in 10 million would have to reproduce rapidly so that the entire human race could be refurbished once again to achieve the so-called evolution. And when you think about it, it will be a part of the common people who gain the survival advantage, or the elite world from that. Less than 1% of the rich. So evolution is rather a long process, and the brutality of this process only seems less desperate and frustrating after being diluted by hundreds of thousands of millions of years. Where human ancestors walking upright was a result of a deteriorating living environment and then a brutal process of survival of the fittest, there were doors open for even more incredible evolution in the future. As I said earlier, walking upright uses only about 1/4 of the energy of crawling, so our ancestors could have traveled much greater distance with the same food intake, giving them the potential to walk and run long distances. But this is something that still needs a series of packages to be perfected. Since all the heavy lifting of the whole body was carried out by feet, they become highly specialized tools. When the advent of the arc, we gave up the flexibility of the ball of the food and installed shock absorption for running. In order to move more steadily, the lower limbs became thicker, and the knees began to get bigger. The pelvis began to enlarge to support the weight of the upper body. These structural changes in turn require more energy and nutritional support, especially for the canonical limbs. Prolonged upright walking and warfare also requires a greater sense of balance. So, to a certain extent, simulate the evolution of the brain. Because the brain, in turn, according to the visual sex interest, are hundreds of meridian, tendon, muscle, fine turning to achieve balance. This you can try to stand on one foot with your eyes open and closed. In the absence of the support of the visual sex boundary, one-legged standing will become very difficult, which embodies the brain to coordinate the role of a balanced row. But we are different from other non-upright walking primates. There is an obvious difference. Most of our skin is bare off the whole body, thick hair, leaving only localized area. This is why. Originally, the body of fur not only insulates, locks in energy, can prevent sunburn against mosquito infections in the bushes the day before yesterday, can also be prevented from being scratched by thorns or infections. But because camouflaging the environment, after all, a naked body of the field is too obvious. So why did humans give up this all-over body? After all, most mammals retain hair all over their body. Only animals like elephants and hippopotamus, which are too large and have too small of a surface to volume ratio, have much thinner hair and bare skin because of their need to dispel heat. In fact, this issue has been repeated debates, including the young to sustain hygiene needs, and even water source hypothesis. But most of all, these theories are far-fetched reasons, but also cannot explain why other animals do not evolve this way. In fact, the most fundamental reason, but also for upright walking, because this is the characteristics of human beings. In the energy advantage of upright walking, the human body's various packages have also begun to gradually keep up. But long-distance walking will bring a very fatal problem, that is, the generations of body heat. You can see that there are many fast runners animals in the world, such as cheetahs, antelopes, ostriches, and so on. But most of them can only run quite a limited distance. So cheetahs and tigers spend a lot of time creeping up against their prey before hunting and sneaking attack, shortening the running distance so that they can catch their prey with their limited range of attack. If they decide to outwide themselves and continue to run for longer periods of time, they quickly burn out their nervous system from the build-up of heat and faint and die. And what about us humans? Humans are the only animal capable of sustainable running over long distances such as a marathon. Human running speed is not fast compared to most animals of the same size, but the explosive power of sprinting is very poor. But there is no animal that can run for hours on the end and complete a marathon for even more than 40 kilometers in one go. Even for horses, generally running 10 kilometers need to rest once. The horse, in the case of no human feeding, it is difficult to replenish enough energy to complete this kind of long-distance running. And for us humans, the energy-saving advantage of walking upright makes it easy for us to obtain enough energy reserves to complete this kind of high-speed trekking. So this is what humans need, is the cooling system. So degressing magically evolved a larger number of small sweat glands at the same time, making humans the creatures with the strongest sweating ability of all of the animals, and in this way also creatures with the strongest heat dissipation ability. But what did such long-distance running ability bring to human beings? As you can imagine, on the African Sahara, humans were weak apes fresh from the trees, inexperienced hunters and slow runners. Since their brains had not yet begun to evolve significantly, they were no smarter than any other animals and therefore had little hunting skills. So what happens when they try to hunt potentially? So I think it's likely to be a stupidly slow run towards the prey. For herbivorous prey, see such not a sneak attack, not hidden, will not set traps when the guy running directly jump away. Anyway, it is not as fast as me. The original human will not give up. continue to run to the prey. This time the human has no hunting skills, is to die chasing prey, which brings the collective evolutionary pressure to adapt to the long distance running. For example, now living in Americas or the Australian jungle aboriginals, they will be staring at the deer, chasing the day and the night, the middle of the day, no change, no water, no rest. The prey continue running still in a state of panic, accelerating the consumption of energy, and do not dare to drink water and eat on the way, ultimately causing heart stroke and complete collapse to the ground and become a source of protein for human beings. In fact, the human body is almost stereotyped. It's also in about 200,000 years ago when Homo sapiens appeared. Human beings began to plan the land into agricultural era is only 10,000 years ago. Sitting in the office life is less than 100 years. That is to say, we have this body still more adapted to that life of running, hunting for example. We left the hair on the top of the head is to run in Africa against the direct sunlight from the top of the head. Eyebrows are also to prevent running head sweat to confuse the eyes, because the shape of the eyebrows will lock a large proportion of sweat, and cheeks on both sides of the channeling cooked gluteal muscles are also to put the thighs to run more vigorously. Strong pectoral muscles is also to be able to throw more vigorously. Long hair does not hunt. At the same time, this also explains why people who have been sitting in the office for a long time will have all kinds of physical problems. Just stay at home for a few days, you will also feel disheveled. Always want to run in the fields to let off steam, but also explains why a proper run every day can keep the body healthy. When the forced upright walking started a unique evolutionary direction, hunting ability brought by long-distance running gradually gave people the nutrition they needed, while the liberation of hands stimulated the need to use tools. And the group living along the tree canopy increased the need for socialization. Convergence of all these factors lead to an revolutionary change, rapid neurological development of the human brain, where the story of human intelligence and the principles that led to the emergence of civilization by the fertility dilemma brought about by walking upright will be told in the next issue.